Thursday, February 17th, 2022 Commission meeting of the Oregon Liquor and Cannabis Commission. Please take the roll.
Commissioner Curran.
Here.
Commissioner Doherty.
Here.
Commissioner Floyd.
Here.
Commissioner Japong Porter.
Here.
Commissioner Miletus.
Here.
Commissioner Raval.
Here.
Chair Rosenbaum.
Here. Our first order, which is now something we will be doing every month, is the approval of the January 20th Commission meeting minutes, which all of you have a copy of, I'm sure. So is there any discussion? All right, I need a motion, please.
So moved.
Commissioner.
Support? We need support on this, don't we?
Yeah. I moved that.
Okay.
Okay. Commissioner Curran.
Yes.
Commissioner Doherty.
Yes.
Commissioner Floyd.
Yes.
Commissioner Japong Porter.
Let's leave the roll open.
She's here. Commissioner Porter, I think you're muted.
I can't find her. Where is she?
She's off to the side. Her camera is off.
Oh,
Okay, well, do you want to come back to her? Commissioner Miletus.
hello?
Commissioner Miletus.
Yes. Sorry. Yeah.
Commissioner Raval.
Yes.
Chair Rosenbaum.
Yes. Okay, next item is the marijuana violation case resolution warnings. Rich, welcome.
Good morning, Commissioner. I appreciate being back in front of you today, Commissioners. Chair, for the record, my name is Rich Evans, and I'm the Senior Director of Licensing and Compliance. This will be my final report on the HD backlog of the cases. For those, I'll just do a quick review. We had nearly a backlog of near 500 cases sitting pending for charging decisions at the Administrative Hearings Division. Some of those cases, however, were voluntary destruction orders and other violations. What we were hearing from the industry is that it was taking us a very long time to charge some of these violations, and so we went through the backlog of the cases to see where they were actually from and what type of violations they were. We have reviewed all the cases, and currently there's only 40 cases in the backlog pending to be charged, which is down considerably. We've moved the others through to warnings, through formal warnings or informal warnings, or assigned to case presenters for charges. Now, if you look back at the cases we looked at and the ones that we reviewed, they were from the years 2019, 2020, and the beginning of 2021. Some of them were 2, 3, 4 years old. So when we looked at the cases, I looked at them for the seriousness of the violation, the cooperation of the company, client, licensee, and checked in on some of the cases with the inspectors to make sure that the issue was corrected, not repeated, and that there were no further violations. The way I have a couple analogies for you, the commissioners. One of the things that happened when we first started the marijuana program is we set the speed limit, and I'm a retired trooper, so I use the speed limit, but we had a 55-mile-an-hour posted speed limit, and if you went over 56 miles an hour, we actually moved those enforcement cases through AHD. And what we're finding now with the evolution of the industry is that there can be a little more tolerance in the violations. So some of the violations that we were charging in 2019 and moving the cases forward, are actually handled in a different manner today with the inspectors and regulatory specialists gaining voluntary compliance by just talking to our licensees and making sure they get these items fixed. Not every case is a nail in a hammer, for lack of better terms. And so we are moving the marijuana program more in line with what the liquor program is, where we're looking for voluntary compliance, and you won't see as many of the violations coming forward to the commission in the future. Some of the violations that you guys have seen a lot of are camera violations. You've seen a lot of licensees that fail to notify the commission of interest and funding, and a lot of those violations can be worked through with our licensee if there's no foul play or behavior that doesn't rise to a level of official, frankly, official a record of non-compliance. And so we're in the process, as I told you, of hiring a few more case presenters. 2 folks just went to background. So our backlog in the future, we're going to start charting how long it takes a case from start to finish once it hits a case presenter's desk, so that we kind of have an idea of how long it's going to take us from start to finish, and how long it will, how many people we need to continue with our enforcement priorities. So with that, I'll answer any questions the commissioners have.
Commissioners?
Is there still, even though it's not coming to our level, or you can resolve it, it sounds like in the field, is there something on the record that's been resolved in the field and not brought here?
Commissioner Doherty, yes, we track violations in our case tracker. Basically, anytime an inspector goes to a location, we track that, and we also have verification of compliance program, which was started last year, which is basically if a violation is found, the inspector puts the licensee on notice and gives them an amount of time to fix the violation. It's basically a fix-it ticket, and if they fail to fix it, then it can become a formal violation. But we do track all of our compliance actions, and some of the way that we're going to do that moving forward is if somebody was warned for a similar or like violation within a certain period of time, it may be a minor violation or lower level, but if they fail to voluntarily comply, those cases will be forwarded to the hearings division for review.
Okay, and so when they go for renewal, whether they get a 5-year or 10-year renewal, this might be a satisfactory rather than an exceptional, because they have some of these minors on there.
Yeah, so there's when we look at a renewal, which is for a year, it's year to year, we do look at the compliance history, and then we do have the ability, if they have a poor record of compliance, we call it lack of institutional control, then we would do a criterion report looking at all the violations, and then we would internally make a decision on whether they're licensable going forward.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I think you just answered my question, but I'll follow up on that. I was going to ask about the permit one that's for the Reservation Ranch, where it says permanent closure. And I was just wondering why we would need to do a warning for some, it looks like it permanently closed.
Commissioner Curran, there are a lot of times when those licensees may have another license somewhere else, or they're involved in other activities. And so even if the business is closed at times, we will issue a warning or a compliance action because they're still in the industry, or if they want to come back into the industry under a different licensing, we would have a record of their compliance. It was serious enough that the hearings hearings division folks wanted to create a record for further purposes. They may have had some other violations in the past. I don't know on this one in particular, but a record's been created for future licensing events.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Chair, I just was going to chime in. I just want to thank staff again. I know like this process started a couple of years ago, and I know how much time it's taken for the hearings division and for enforcement to kind of refine this. We talked about it a little bit last meeting, but now that Rich is here, I just wanted to thank them again. I think, just because we speak with a lot of these folks on a day-to-day basis, especially the commissioners, because we get all the calls. And, one of the biggest ones was having the letters go out for violations that could have been even a year old, but sometimes as much as 2 years old. And it was hard to justify. And so I think that it's really great that we were able to kind of parse this down and refine the systems that we started with, back in 2016. So thank you, Rich, and thank you to the hearings division.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I'll second Commissioner Miletus. You did a good job on it. It was long overdue, and we thank you.
Thank you,
The
Chair.
last, I can't help but just make one other comment, obviously tongue in cheek, but from my personal experience, the state troopers in Michigan gave the benefit of the doubt when you were 1 or 2 miles over the speed limit. Much better than you guys were. Thank you.
That's because he
You're
was
welcome.
a nice guy. We were never nice guys.
I said I couldn't resist saying it. It was tongue in cheek, but thank you
I know who
anyway.
you're talking about.
Yeah, a long time ago. Thank you.
Long time ago.
Thank you. That's right. It's a whole different world.
Chair.
Let's have a warehouse update from Chris Mayton.
Chair,
Chris,
one
good
one
morning.
sec. Chair Rosenbaum.
Yes, do we need a motion on that? Yes, I do. I'm sorry, I apologize.
No, it's okay. I have one question for Rich before we go on with the motion, if you don't mind. Rich, how many more in the reserve do we have here? Or is this it? Or is there more we need?
There's 40 cases that have not been assigned to case presenters. Every other case on the marijuana side has been assigned to a case presenter, and they're working the cases. So that's all that's left.
Wonderful. And remind me again, how many did we start with when you started it?
Near 500.
Wow.
Great job. Great job. Thank you.
Chair,
Commissioner Curran,
I move to approve the warnings notification report.
Commissioner Curran,
Yes.
Commissioner Doherty,
Yes.
Commissioner Floyd. Yes. Commissioner Japong Porter,
Yes.
Commissioner Miletus,
Yes.
Commissioner Oval,
Yes.
Chair Rosenbaum.
yes. Now we go to Chris Mayton, warehouse update.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, my name is Chris Mayton, and I'm the Distilled Spirits Program Director and Interim Chief Financial Officer for the Oregon Liquor and Cannabis Commission. I'm here today to give you a brief update on our warehouse and headquarter relocation project and some of the events that have been occurring since the last meeting. I'll start with Legislature Engagement. Executive Director Steve Marks and I presented before the Ways and Means Transportation and Economic Development Subcommittee on February the 10th. Some of the items that we discussed in that meeting were rising costs due to price escalation and the COVID inflation. We talked about the price for industrial land in Oregon and the construction and labor higher costs. We talked about how the pricing continues to fluctuate with market uncertainty, supply chain challenges, coupled with the domestic labor shortages that we're experiencing, and the need for additional bond funding. And then we also capped with the revenue to be realized with investment and the impacts to revenue with delays. It was an informational only meeting, so just bringing legislators up to speed, those who were new, and then updating those that have been involved in the project since its conception. The next thing we did was Commissioner Subcommittee Engagement, which we did on February 14th. The staff met with members of the Commission Subcommittee to provide updates and solicit direction. As far as the properties that we've been looking at, our negotiations continue. Dash Real Estate and Cushman Wakefield provided an RFP response to the final properties, and it was a best and final response. We are on track for a March 2022, so next month, contract execution and a December property close. So next month, we would have a meeting for you to decide the property and do the intent to award so that we can engage with DOJ to craft the purchase sales agreement for that property. We anticipate that commission meeting and site selection next month, possibly March 8th. And next category, I guess, would be design and architecture. Really, the contract and statement of work for design and architecture firm LRS Architects is in the process of being drafted for approval by the Procurement and Department of Justice. So that's ongoing and continuous. We met with LRS and their design team. We did a warehouse tour and headquarter tour this week to show our current business operations and our needs. And then last, but certainly not least, the ongoing discussions surrounding the Milwaukee property partitions. Staff continues to work with DOJ and Clackamas County and Dash Real Estate regarding the petitioning of the McLaughlin property that Clackamas County currently occupies along the west side of Johnson Creek. And that area, is, as a reminder, is just below 3 acres. And staff is preparing recommendations for the commissioners based on some updated appraisal we recently received that will reflect the setbacks and flood hazards on the west side of the property. We anticipate this coming to the March 17th commission meeting for decision in order for staff to meet the deadline for Public Lands Advisory Committee, or the PLAC, meeting in April. So you should see that on your agenda for the next monthly commission meeting. With that being said, that's the update I have for the warehouse. Nikki is doing a great job keeping the products coming in and taking new innovation in and keeping us keeping our deliveries outbound. Our absenteeism in the warehouse has certainly improved. I'll talk about that a little bit more on the next presentation. And then the capacity size, it's January and February. So first quarter for us is a little bit slower. So it's kind of cleanup time. So we're getting our ducks in a row, and you'll see in the next presentation how our volume has increased each year and what it's doing to us. So I'll be able to share that during our business review. But with that being said, any questions about headquarter and relocation?
Chris, I don't know. You've got too many titles now. So if I can call you Chris.
That's perfect, sir.
I noticed in the minutes from last time that we were looking for an exemption to the low bid process. Can you help me with that a little bit?
So there was an exemption that we were trying to go after with Dash Real Estate to kind of get on their broad reach exemption, and we were informed that we could not use that, and we would have to go out for our own exception. In our discussions with Dash, it was determined that we should go with the CMGC project, which is really a construction manager, general contractor, which allowed us to use a more diverse selection of vendors into the pool. And I think, Steve, is there anything you'd like to add on that?
Okay.
Nope, admirable job, Chris. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other, Commissioner Miletus?
So Chris, at the March, or sorry, Commissioner Miletus, for the record, at the March 8th meeting, we're gonna be announcing publicly the sites, correct?
So Chairman, Commissioner Miletus, if in February session we are approved for the funding that we are needed for the project, the commissioners would decide and announce the intent to award the property right now it's scheduled for March 8th.
Yeah, no, I think that's good that we're meeting quickly, because I mean, and I'll have more to say then, but there's a significant undersupply of industrial, and if the quicker we move, the more we're able to secure the future of this agency. So I think it's good we're moving quick, and the legislature is aware, and we're attaining our position in those jobs that we create by moving the warehouse. So great job, and I'm glad we're aggressively moving on this.
Any other questions? It's my understanding this is the first time in a long time you had full labor at the warehouse. Is that correct?
Yes, in the next presentation, Nikki will be on, but we had the first time in 2 years, we had a day with 0 unplanned absenteeism, which was fantastic.
Good. Okay, well, let's go on to the next one. We have the Triumphant Three. We have Chris, Brian, and Nikki.
So again, for the record, I'll introduce myself. I'm Chris Mayton, Distilled Spirits Program Director and Interim Chief Financial Officer. I brought two of my best partners, business partners with me. I'll start with Director Fleming. Introduce yourself, please.
For the record, Brian Fleming, Director of Retail Services. And good morning, Commissioners and Chair. I think you'll find his presentation fascinating at the amount of volume we're doing.
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. For the record, Nikki Leslie, Purchasing and Distribution Director. Thank you.
Nikki, have you
Chairman,
personally
Commissioners,
met either Commissioner Doherty or Commissioner Porter?
Yes, I have. At one, we had a meeting I think about 2 weeks ago.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman, Commissioners, I'm going to share my screen with you. Give me just 30 seconds here, make sure that works. Can you see that?
We can.
Okay, perfect. Let me just move one window out of the way. Okay, so this is our calendar year 2021 annual business review. It's only about 14 slides, but I just want to give you a kind of a recap of what's going on or what was happening last year. If you looked at year over year shipping volume, we were up about 2.2% total coming out of the warehouse going to the independent liquor stores, which was plus about 80 almost 84,000 cases. Total state liquor sales were up 6.2%. And I'll show some more numbers on that, dollars on that in just a minute. If you look at our total cases shipped throughout the year, it was 3,965,000 cases. That's all products. Just under 4 million cases. Total statewide liquor sales, $813 million, with an estimated revenue distribution to state services, $322.9 million. So just a great year in revenue producing for the state and an estimated revenue distribution for state services. If you look at how that breaks out on the next slide by quarter for shipping, this slide represents a 4-year look quarter by quarter at cases shipped from our warehouse to those independent liquor stores. In 2021, shipping volume was collectively up by 2.2%, as I just mentioned. The first and the fourth quarters were slightly below prior year. If you remember, 2020 was what we were calling COVID year, where we had that huge influx of hoarding at the front part of the year. So it's to be expected. But if you look at those first and fourth quarters, both of those numbers are again respectably above the 2019 numbers. So the growth continued there. And then the second and third quarters were both growing, with Q2 up 6.7% and Q3 up 3%. And mind you, these are all shipping numbers. So these are the case volume that Nikki and her team are pushing out to the retail liquor stores. This is the same slide, but using liquor store sales. So statewide sales, a 4-year look quarter by quarter. And you can see there are no red marks here. In 2021, liquor sales percentage growth returned to a bit of normalcy, though, growing at 6.2% for the year. All 4 quarters saw positive gains, up 4.3 in Q1, 7% in Q2, 6% in Q3, and 7.1% in Q4. I use this to make a mention about the growth in dollars. A lot of our growth comes from price inflation and population growth. The number of bottles sold at the liquor stores typically is between 1.5% and 2% and an annual increase. So the volume of alcohol is marginally improved, but the dollars are generated primarily through population growth and through the price inflation. This slide shows the calendar year growth rate. So you can see that big spike in year 2020. That's our That's our high rise for COVID inflation, I call it. In 2017, we were up about 4%, 6% in 18, 6% in 2019, and then that spike in 2020. And we've returned back to our normalcy at 6.2%, $813 million in sales. If you look at what's driving that by category, our top 4 volume categories are really continues to be vodka. It's at 23.82%, but its market share is dropping year over year by a little over a point. Domestic whiskey continues to be a big category leader at 19.25%, but as well, it's dropping just a little bit in its share year over year. Tequila continues to be a main driver. It's at 14.61% market share, and it's got the top growth category at 1.84%. So it continues to just be an influx of new products and high demand coming for all lines of tequila. And then last but not least, the Canadian whiskey I've highlighted there because it's at a little over 11%, 11.44% of the category share, but it's also declining at a 0.51%. In our growth categories, which is the last number that's on the end of each of those slides, there is tequila, as I mentioned, was up 1.84%. Cordials is up 0.26%, and a lot of people don't really know what cordials are. So just as a recap, that's kind of the mixers that goes into bars and restaurants. A lot of bars and restaurants were closed in 2020. So we expect, all of those opened back up in 2021. So they started buying those products again, and that drove the spike there up 0.26%. Cocktails, that's always canned cocktails. So it's got a very small part of the dollar share, but it's growing the third highest rate of all categories, up 0.22%. A lot of new innovation in canned cocktails. And then Irish whiskey is continuing to grow. It's at 0.11%. So that just kind of highlights our top 4. And that is primarily driven, through consumer purchase behavior in those independent stores. So let me talk about those expanding small businesses. Just as a recap, our main role here is to purchase the alcohol, to warehouse that alcohol, and then distribute that alcohol to our independent owners of those liquor stores throughout the state. We have 281 private businesses that contract with us to sell distilled spirits through Oregon, and these businesses provide consumer access to a world-class variety of distilled spirit products that are offered for sale at the same price throughout the state. So it creates that equity there. To ensure customer convenience in 2016, we began a competitive process of store expansion. We actually started in 15, but the first store didn't get approved until 16. And we wanted to achieve a target level of service at 1 store per 15,000 in population. And we are committed to maintain that stable and predictable level of access into the future. And I'll show you where we're at on the next slide here. Retail store expansion also serves store delivery of major brands and locally distilled Oregon products to bars and restaurants in support of local hospitality jobs and special events in communities across Oregon. In the slides ahead, I'll be able to talk to you a little bit more about the jobs that have been created through all the retail store expansion that you've approved. And then last but not least, the sales of distilled spirits by a liquor store. It's projected to generate, $631 million in the 21-23 budget that's distributed to state, county, and city services for education, health, public safety, and other public services. Those small independent operating businesses are at the center of our successful expansion strategy to service the needs of citizens and our economy while meeting the Commission's responsibility to generate predictable and stable revenue well into the future. What is our population per liquor store? So here I have active stores. So the Commission has approved more stores than this, but these are the stores that are open and operating. I mean, you can see if you go back to 2009, we were around 241 stores and close to 16,000 per store. And then we jumped over 16,000 in 15, and then retail expansion started in 2016. And that number started to drive down. So 15.7, and then 15.2 in 2018, and then 14.9 in 2019, and then just 14.996 in 2020, And then today we're at 15,183. That number will go down a little bit more because the commission has approved 8 stores that have yet to open. Those stores will be coming. And normally you would see a number there that said 284. I mind you, we still have 3 stores that are closed due to lease loss on one, and then wildfires do 2 other stores. So we have 281 active stores with the current population. That sits right at 15,183 per store. So we're staying in target with our line. What does that look like statewide? Well, if you look at 2015, we had that 248 stores, like I mentioned, and population of 16,185 per store. Our state sales at that time were about $558 million, or an average of about 2.3 million per store. So today we're at 281 stores with 15,183 in population per store, and just over $813 million, or $2.9 million per store. That means the statewide, since 2016, the cumulative sales have grown $4.1 billion since 2016. And that's a cumulative growth rate of 45.5%. Now, a big piece of that is our retail expansion. We have added 36 stores since 2016, and that included 25 new agents. And someone would probably ask, well, why didn't you have 36 there too? Well, that's 25 new agents and then 11 existing agents that applied and have more than 1 store. With that, in those 36 stores, that has created 164 jobs across the state of Oregon. And that's a huge benefit, with a cumulative sales of just over $287 million since 2016, which contributes an additional almost $110 million to the general fund. So statewide, on the map, you'll see all the blue dots are existing stores. The yellow dots are those expansion stores. Now you'll see the green triangles. Those are the expansion stores that have unopened yet. And I'll scroll into that on the next slide to show you the map of that was the Portland metro area that was approved late last year. And those stores are under construction right now. So the next 5 slides are the 5 major metro areas, and I wanted to show the impact that these stores are having in those markets. So the slides kind of repeat, but they're just different counties. So this is the Portland metro area, which is the 3 counties that you see outlined there. We had 68 stores in 2015. We have 79 stores today. Population back in 15 was 25,667. Today, it's 23,431. So that's why those 8 stores are desperately needed in Portland Metro to continue to drive that population per store down. Sales went from 281 to 377. And average sales went from 4.1 to 4.8. That retail expansion is 12 new stores in the Portland Metro area, 7 new agents, 81 new jobs created in those 3 counties, with a cumulative sales of $166 million, $63.4 million in distribution. The second biggest market of growth came from Jackson-Josephine County. We had 6 new stores through retail expansion in that market. If you look back in 2015.
Hey, Chris, I'm sorry. I got thrown off this meeting. I had to get back on, and if you covered it, fine. If you haven't, my question I wanted to know is on those stores that are not open yet, most of them in the Portland area, what's the main reason why? If you've covered it, I apologize, but I just was thrown off.
Chairman, commissioners, that's a great question. The main reason those stores are not open are due to supply chain challenges. We are in line in some stores waiting for permits. We are in line at some stores waiting for shelving. The alcohol is here for those stores, but the material shortages that they need to finish and complete those stores are what holding them up. I've heard rumors. In fact, let me ask Brian, since he's on the call with us. He knows a little bit more specific. Shelving is backlogged weeks. I just want to give you some context. Brian, could you answer that in more detail?
Chair Rosenbaum, commissioners, yes. So one of the primary suppliers is 6 to 9 months out at a minimum on shelving. So that's steel and the uprights that obviously hold our shelving. And one of the more significant challenges, especially because of PDX, has been the permitting. So permitting is way behind. We have stores, 2 stores that are pretty much ready to go, but are waiting on either finals or the next step to move, whether it's, and I'll get it wrong, but whether it's electrical or plumbing or walls, they're still waiting on permitting for a couple of the stores that are ahead of the game, if you will.
So are you saying the city of Portland is holding up?
Yeah, that's what our agents are telling us, is permitting delays months and months behind.
All right, we'll have this conversation further. Thank you.
So back to Jackson, Josephine County, as I mentioned, second largest market of retail expansion with 6 new stores, 2 new agents, 14 new jobs in those 2 counties, and about cumulative sales of $16.9 million and distribution dollars at 6.4. So just a big impact onto that. You know, we went from 16 stores to 22. Population there was 18,418. Now it's down to 14,207 per store. So right under the threshold we were looking for. So it's, you know, it seems to be set up the way it needs to be today. And sales are continuing to drive. You see the average sales per store going from 2 million to 2.4. So collective increases in that market. The next major hub would be Deschutes County, 5 new stores in that market over the last 6 years, 4 new agents, and 26 jobs created by those stores, which is fantastic. You'll see $42 million added in cumulative sales for those expansion stores, and that's over $16 million in distribution. We went from 10 stores to 15. Population per store was just over 17,000 in 2015. Today, it's 13,559. Average sales of 59.3 and average sales per store of just over $4 million. So that market is primed and you know, set for success into the future. Lane County, this is really, you know, Eugene Central Market. You know, 4 new stores added since 2015 with 4 new agents. So no existing agents took over there. 13 new jobs and a cumulative total of about $20 million in sales since they've expanded, which added about 7.8 million to distribution. And population per store there, you see it went from 18 stores and 20,119 per store to 22 stores with 17,393. So still a little bit of room there, another store or 2 into the future, you know, spread out through population density. But, you know, as you know, through our retail expansion efforts, we may have a store that's just on the other side of that county line. So it's not included on this roadmap. So it might be a little deceptive there, but we take that into consideration when we're looking at retail expansion.
How did the Florence store do? I remember that in particular. I'm just curious.
I'm going to defer that to Director Fleming.
So Florence, Chairman, Florence store, and I'll try and get you a year over year number. I think it's somewhere around 500,000. Florence North, just for January, did about $100,000. They're on track to probably do somewhere around $1 million annually.
Wow.
And I can certainly cover. I mean, there's some shockers in some of these small communities, you know, like Merlin, Selma, store-to-store concepts that have, you know, $500,000, $600,000, $700,000. Some real surprises out of some of the smaller stores. And a lot of this is, you know, population moving through. And I'll go back to Bend as an example. Bend has a significant amount of travel and tourism. And so, you know, having an average of over $4 million per store, that's some of that volume, you know, Sun River, the mountains. So a lot of it is definitely travel and tourism.
We had a good discussion and a lively one on Florence. I remember that very well.
We've had a few over the days.
Well, I'm glad to see they're doing well. That's great. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Last county, major metro market area, only one new store in Marion County. But as you can see, the store count in 2015 was 11 with just under 30,000 population per store. Marion County today has 12 stores. Population's at 28,932 for those stores. Just under $50 million in total sales cumulatively and 4.1 average sales, going from 2.9. So just big growth in that market. This one's a little misleading as well because you have, in the Salem metro market, you have other counties connected across it. And there's some stores right across the river on the other side of that county line. So it kind of brings that numbers looks a little inflated than it actually is, but definitely another opportunity market for us in the future to look at for retail expansion as well. I guess my primary is I'm going to go back to the first statewide slide. And I just want to give mention where mention is due. The whole purpose of this really was to show what retail expansion has contributed to the overall sales and revenue to the state since the expansion effort and how many jobs it's creating across the state. And to make mention that these are independent contractors that are out there, 281 of them. And the state is keeping its control by making sure that we have a targeted range of one store per 15,000 population. And it's really just an attribute to all the hard work of men and women that are out there in those retail stores and to our staff here in distribution and in retail. So with that, I'll stop and ask Steve Marks if he has any other additional comments before I take questions.
Thank you, Chris. Just for the record, Steve Marks, Executive Director. Chris, you said it pretty well, but I want to reiterate, when we planned this work for expansion, we really, I think, recognize that it's our partnerships and contracts with all these private businesses that sell distilled spirit. It's really the key ingredient to us being able to meet demand across the state and providing access to local and world-class products. And our successful work in this area to tie store expansion to population growth is mission driven. It's the balance point between sustained results for consumer satisfaction, the prosperity of the hospitality industry itself, with the balance point with public safety and with our fiscal responsibilities to ensure predictable and stable revenue growth for state and local public services, as Chris said, well into Oregon's future. This wasn't by accident, this was by design. And I'm really proud of the work we did, this report. Thanks for your excellent work on this, Chris, Nikki, Brian. Really reflects, about 5 years of work to advance this there, to create the process, to envision the relationship of population growth to store expansion and to execute it on the ground. So proud of this report and our success in moving forward. So thank you.
Chair Rosenbaum, Commissioner Revolve.
Commissioner?
I think it's, I want to thank Brian. I want to thank Steve as well. I said, and I want to go back a little bit in history. There was a time when Steve and I and Rob Patras actually were in Florida talking with the industry on how we could advance what we're doing today. And without the help of the industry, we would have never gotten to this point in our time span that we've been over the last 8 years. They were extremely helpful. They stepped back, they listened to us. They made a commitment to help the state of Oregon take a look at what demographics was and marketing was. When we first took a look at some of these, I was shocked at the number of clients that beer had throughout the state as opposed to spirits and or wine. So their help in the early years was of more help than we could possibly have imagined. We still have those strong relationships. you know, you would want to be very proud of Steve and Rob at that breakfast we were at one point, really negotiating with the industry to say, you know, we're all new here. We want your help, and with your help, we can move forward. And golly, guys, take a look at that. We're fantastic as what we've been able to do with the citizens of Oregon. So just a little history. The industry has been extremely helpful, and we have great partners that we should be really happy about.
Commissioner Raval, you remind me that 5 years is probably too short a time frame here. We really started the process of defining how we were going to set up the process to move forward. So appreciate that.
And I still don't wear woolly socks or Birkenstocks.
Commissioner Japon Porter, did you have a question?
I did. And it's just a question of curiosity. I was just wondering if there were any facts or figures on the job and revenue impact reflected with the coming of the new warehouse. I may have missed that.
Chairman, Commissioner Porter, I can say that those discussions are ongoing. I can say the job impact for our employees will be zero. We made it intentful to make sure that we're not losing anyone. We're going to improve our efficiencies by adding small amounts of automation into the warehouse. But the intent there was to absolutely not lose a single person, and in fact, over time, improve.
Sorry, I actually was wondering about the downstream, how it would benefit and potentially increase jobs for the licensees, the liquor stores.
As our demand is able to be met with our new warehouse, then those businesses will be able to continue to flourish and grow. We'll be able to continue with retail expansion and continue to offer new jobs, and licensees and bars and restaurants will be able to get the products that they need, which will keep people employed and create more job opportunities.
Yeah, so and Commissioner, I'd just add Steve Marks, Executive Director, for the record. At times, and we need to redo this look, I think the secondary effects, how large this sector of the economy is across the state, we from time to time looked at all the estimates of what that might be, and we don't have precise figures, but it's quite large, and we should recreate that exercise. But about $1 billion, 7 annual sales just in distilled spirits alone, beer, wine, the breweries across the board. When you look at the system, we are a large part of the hospitality sector of the economy, and a pretty big slice of, at least a representative slice of Oregon's GDP. So in terms of your overall regulatory control, I went a little broader than just the warehouse impact, which really relates to distilled spirits.
Thank you.
Commissioner Miletus.
Just echo. Thanks, staff. I mean, this is just fantastic, and it just drives home what a beautiful system we've got in Oregon. I mean, every community and independent business that, those are family jobs. Those have their own opportunity to own something, and they're in their community. So I'm very proud of the system. I'm very proud of the work that everybody did. I think Commissioner Porter's question too, the other portion of the warehouse expansion is, I mean, there's going to be a lot of union jobs created in terms of the construction warehouse. So that's going to be all, that'll be another job creation driver. So anyways, great job, guys. I just wanted to put my thanks and appreciation on the record as well.
Any other questions? It's glaring that there's no expansion on the east side of the state. Just about none that you can think of. The question, if it's based on population, I'm assuming that the population will not allow expansion in those areas, and that there's, tell us what you're thinking in terms of some expansion on the east side of the state.
Well, I can start with that, and then I'll let Brian jump in and add to it. When I said 1 per 15,000, that's just one of the many KPMs that we use to allocate stores. And another one is drive time, where we want to look at how much time is between the stores. And in this case, if you're talking about Eastern Oregon specifically, you don't have a lot of population density, but it's spread out over a large area. So you want to make sure that you have convenient models within it. Brian, is there any more detail you want to add to that?
Yeah, Chair, Commissioners. So that was, we did have some in some of our expansion efforts. Some of them failed, to come through. And drive time and distance is the key factor, because some stores are, call it one store per 6,000, one per 8,000. And our mission, from what I've known generally, has always been to provide access to the public and convenience to the public. And many of you know that our liquor store is 12 feet of shelving behind the register, but it still provides access to the products that we sell. So it's definitely still on the radar for small communities that have to travel a long distance. We just didn't have the number of people come forward in parts of rural and Eastern Oregon, or the caliber of the proposal or location did not meet with the commission approval.
One other question I have, how are we competitive wise with the price of liquor in Idaho?
That's a great question, and I'm not the statistician. However, we're about a tiny bit higher than them. I actually received a call in the last month and a half that had to do with the minimum pricing from the director of their retail, and said, "Hey, when did you implement?" And I said, "Well, Nikki began to implement this in August, and September was completed by October." And the comment was, "Wow, we've really seen nothing come across the border to us." So that tells me that pricing, minimum pricing, obviously didn't have as great an impact, one, to them, and two, they're still staying within state, and we are bar none one of the greatest selections of spirits across control states. So
Right. No, I understand that, but it's also, you just basically indicated that it'll probably be a little while before we have expansion on the east side.
I can, Chairman, this is Chris Mayton for the record. I can add a little more context to that pricing question. Oregon is number 2 pricing in the state, or in the states, highest price, but on average. But when you look at our border states, we're well below Washington. Idaho, we're kind of a split mix. About half of our products are a fraction higher, and then the other half of our products are lower. And as Brian, the Director Fleming just mentioned, even with the minimum pricing that drives the lowest prices up, it didn't drive it enough to get it to go across the border. So, and that was strategic. We did a really in-depth pricing look at all of the markets that surrounded us, especially border stores, to see where that was going to lay before we put those thresholds in place. And we still have room to grow, I would say, in that manner.
And Mr. Chairman, let me just add, Eastern Oregon has always been like a service area part of our system, right? We are here to provide service to Eastern Oregon to make sure it's more convenient, it's less driven by population as we look at that. And, it doesn't really unbalance our 1 per 15,000 number as we look at those small service areas. The other part, prices are the same in Eastern Oregon for everything, and special orders are attainable to each of those stores. So we provide good access to the full quality of products through the smaller store model that's typical in a lot of parts of Eastern Oregon. I'm not saying we don't have some quite large stores in some of the larger rural communities throughout Eastern Oregon. But that service model is one that we can build on to make sure that we provide that equivalent service across the state. And that's one of the, great features of our system.
Well, I think you know by this time, I don't ask questions in a vacuum. I'll connect all the dots together on the questions I'm asking if and when certain things happen. So I'm just setting the groundwork for it.
Chair.
Commissioner Curran.
I love donating all this time to Eastern Oregon, so that's great to hear that on the record. But you mostly covered it, and I wanted to make a comment. When I first came on, we were part of the Chair Rosenbaum. You'd remember a very large expansion. It was one of our second or third meetings, I believe, 4 or 5 years ago. And there was Eastern Oregon expansion in that, and there were some stores proposed. There were several, I think, at Rite Aid, if I recall, in Hermiston, Pendleton. There was a store in Milton Freewater, Irrigan, I think, potentially Stanfield. But there were some of these smaller towns, and we said no to a lot of those stores at the time. I believe one was in a ranch and home where they sold guns at the same location. And we said no to some of those stores and proposals, but it wasn't because I didn't think that there was an opportunity for more stores. We said no because of the plans that were proposed at the time. We didn't believe that some of those proposals were satisfactory in what we wanted to do as a state. So I still think there's a lot of opportunity, particularly in Hermiston. It is growing. And there's some other places. Milton Freewater is a border to Washington. There's some areas out there that we really could probably take advantage of. And so I think it would be great if we did give some of those opportunities again. And I'm glad to hear that, that's everything I'm hearing sounds really great. So just make those comments.
Thank you, Commissioner. I think that should end this discussion unless anybody has any other comments. Thank you, all three of you. As usual, you do a great job and we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Let's go to compliance. The first item, Andy, are you on?
Good morning, Chair. For the record, my name is Andy Chiller from the Administrative Hearings Division.
Good morning.
Good morning. And I am here to present the marijuana and alcohol stipulated settlement agreements for ratification.
Well, let's take the alcohol one first. Anybody have any questions on it? Commissioner Doherty?
Yes, thank you, Chair. The Noi Tai issue, I just need to get some depth on that. It felt to me, for some reason, a little bit light on the settlement, that this has, been going on for years. They've been withholding tax money and basically cheating, and they were caught on a national basis, I guess. So I don't know if they've had sufficient restrictions or how tough this is. It seemed a little bit light to me, but I may not have all the facts that they have been, I don't know if they did actually do time federally, or if they've made restitution to the state and to the feds for everything that they've done. It was an ongoing 3-year process. So if you could fill me in a little bit so I can be more comfortable with this.
Yes, Commissioner Doherty. Both members that were involved in the crime and who were indicted did actually spend time in prison. I believe one served 4 months and the other served 6 months. Full restitution was made to the federal government as well as the state of Washington. So there, and the key provision in this settlement, and just for a little background, like this was a very extensive negotiation with the licensees to get to this point. And the key point in this settlement was that the two members who were indicted, who were responsible for the criminal activity, have to divest their interest in the licensed entity and are prohibited from being involved in the management of that business going forward. Yes, there was also a suspension or civil penalty provision, but we think the real meat of the agreement, the real repercussion for their action would be basically being excised from the business.
And thank you. And isn't one of them married to another one who's still in the business? Is that, there was two of the same names on there and I don't have it in front of me.
Commissioner Doherty, I apologize. I actually don't know the relation between the members.
Okay. I just saw that there was the same name and one of them was excluded and the other one's in there. It sounded like it could be a man and a wife and they just took the husband out or the wife out and left the other one in. So.
And Commissioner Doherty, that is actually not an infrequent occurrence. We focus our compliance actions on the involved parties, and in a lot of these licensed entities and a lot of settlements, family members are also involved, and family members that were not directly involved with the violations remain in the business.
Okay, thank you. That helps. And you're feeling that they're contrite for what they've done and they've committed to going forward in a legitimate way. I mean, this is
Commissioner Doherty, yes. So they have they voluntarily disclosed their convictions. They have worked with us extensively. They have expressed remorse for their actions, and in fact, the members that were being divested post their conviction have actually participated in conventions and things of the like, using their story as something not to do. So yeah, in communicating with the licensee's attorneys, there's been a lot of information provided that they are in fact very regretful and remorseful for their actions. They actually stopped using the software a significant time before the actual actions that gave rise to the indictment it took place several years ago. And they gave context as to why they used it and the circumstances that, and they are very compelling. So we believed in discussing this particular settlement with the licensee's attorney that this was the appropriate settlement based on the circumstances.
Thank you. That's helpful. Appreciate that.
Any other questions? Well, I just want to tell you, most of the commissioners by this time know I'm going to vote no on this, mainly because I can't put a large brush on everybody in the family, but in this case, and we've seen many cases like this, very few have we seen where two people actually got convicted for using software to skim sales tax off the top. And I'm not going to get into any more other than saying I don't want to be able to say I told you so somewhere down the road, so the commissioners know I'm voting no on this. I'm usually by myself on it. I've got a feeling that Commissioner Doherty may join me somewhere in the future, maybe not on this one, but that's my feelings on it, and that's how I'm going to vote. Please take we need a motion first, please?
Chair?
Yes.
I move to ratify the stipulated settlement agreement for Noi Tai as proposed by staff.
Thank you. Please take the roll.
Commissioner Curran,
Yes.
Commissioner Doherty,
Yes.
Commissioner Floyd,
Yes.
Commissioner Japong Porter.
I wish I could abstain. However, I will.
I think you probably could if you
Could
wanted
I?
to.
I do want to abstain. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
You're perfectly okay to do that.
Commissioner Miletus,
No, I'm with Chair.
Commissioner Raval,
Yes.
Chair Rosenbaum.
No. What's the vote?
Did it not pass?
Correct. Well,
Um,
let's see that. No, that's 3, 1 abstain, 2 noes, and 4's yes. So it would pass.
Pass.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
Sorry.
And for those people who are listening, once again, I want to reiterate, the commissioners do not talk about this beforehand. There's no discussion at all amongst us. It can't be. And the only place that we have an opportunity to discuss this outright is in front of all of you. So I'm having some progress on my way of thinking. Thank you.
Oh, no.
But Commissioner Curran's going to be very, very tough against me forever. All right, let's take the marijuana violation stipulation settlement agreements.
I just need to say, the reasoning for why I usually will say yes, so that Commissioner Doherty knows my position. I just this week am working on a case where both attorneys want to continue the case because we want to continue on settlement purposes. We filed a motion to continue at our office, and it's hard when judges, and I see as our role sometimes as the judges, get involved when parties are making settlements. And so I tend to take the view that we don't know everything that has gone on, and the agency does an excellent job for us. They always do. And that if it looks like they have done a reasonable job in doing it, then I err on the side of supporting their settlement agreement. So.
And I just gotta respond one thing to that. I just can't help myself. I have practiced law in the past, as all of you know, and I've been in front of many, 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 many judges. And we had agreements in hand, and the judge turned around and threw the agreement out and made his or her own decision on it. So I just had to respond to that at that point. Judges do their own things.
Chair Rosenbaum,
Commissioner Revelle.
Commissioner Revolve, you knew I'm going to get involved in this.
Oh, I'm sure you will.
I have presented many cases where they were guilty, and the attorneys who represented those clients were able to outmaneuver me in a court of law. Didn't make it right. It's the way it was going. And one of the things for our 2 newest commissioners to take a look at is when we vote against staff, it forces them to go back into negotiations back and forth, and it can really turn the situation upside down where they've already made a deal with our licensees. And it's important that we not turn it upside down when they've done such an excellent job. We may have our own feelings, but there are ramifications of going back and forth to have to open up this case for the licensee or the individual that has entered into a plea. So if I won't give anybody a break at 56, why would I give somebody a break at this? So it's important that we move forward.
And Commissioner Revelle, I don't take exception to anything you said. I agree with you 100%. So I hope you agree with me that if we don't talk about this, this is the only opportunity we get to do so. And if we don't talk about it in our feelings, so staff has an opportunity, and this is our only opportunity for staff to understand our thinking, because our thinking is important. We are working as a commission, and this is the only opportunity we have to express our feelings to staff on these issues. And so consequently, if we don't speak up, the staff will never understand it. And hopefully by me speaking up and other people speaking up, they will take that into consideration while they're making these decisions without our input.
Yes.
Maybe I should go back to practicing law. Maybe I'll do all right on that. I don't know. Anyway, and thank you all. And
I just want to say too, I think it,
Commissioner.
Oh yeah, sorry, I was just going to say, I think the discussions have been helpful, and I think that as time's gone on, we have. I mean, I would hope staff's taking cues from us, and it's certainly been a wild ride, the last few years. But I think we've hopefully made some impact in our discussions that we've had, and I think it's funneled downstream to the way that the licensees have been impacted as well. So I think the discussions have been good and helpful.
Yes, I concur, Chair Rosenbaum. Discussion is good and has been good for all of us. So, and this is always a good forum for that.
Yeah, and we really work very well together. I mean, there's no animosity, there's no acrimony on any of this. It's just this is the only way we can express ourselves. I'm very happy with the way we're working on this stuff, and I hope you guys are too. Next item is the marijuana violation stipulation settlement agreements. Andy, you want to say anything on this, or you just, Andrea, should we just, you want to say anything on it? I think we all.
Chair Rosenbaum, I feel both of them are fairly straightforward. I'm happy to answer any questions that any of the commissioners have, but I think they stand on their own.
Right. I mean, the only reason I'm doing it now is I just want to get the two new commissioners a little bit acclimated to how we do things. Any questions on any of them? If not, I need a motion. Commissioner Doherty, you're up.
All right, I'm looking for the motion. Hold on a sec here. I move to ratify the 3 stipulated settlement agreements as proposed by staff.
Commissioner Curran,
Yes.
Commissioner Doherty,
Yes.
Commissioner Floyd,
Yes.
Commissioner Japong Porter,
Yes.
Commissioner Miletus,
Yes.
Commissioner Raval,
Yes.
Chair Rosenbaum.
Yes. We're up to retail services. Brian, you're back up. You've been on today.
Morning, Chair Rosenbaum, Commissioners. For the record, Brian Fleming, Director of Retail. I have 23 agreements before you. I did get a little bit of time to explain to one of our newest commissioners, so I'm going to do a brief explanation for Commissioner Japong Porter, because we did not speak about this in some of the orientations we've done. So in a nutshell, we bring forward contracts for renewal in February and in August. Those contracts that you renew are for the following year or the fiscal year. So we're doing these in advance. So the ones today would be done for a July 1 forward for contracts expiring. So just as a point of reference. Secondly, we do 5 and 10-year contracts. The 5-year contract is somebody who has had an overall evaluation of 2 of the last 3 are satisfactory. They would get a 5-year. Of 2 of the last 3 are outstanding, they would be eligible for a 10-year. Much of this is contingent on audits, bank depositing, violations, condition of store, etc. So hopefully that helps us, since we didn't get the opportunity to speak about it.
It does very much. Thank you. I did hear about this a little bit earlier with a bunch of the directors. Thank you.
You're welcome. So with that, I have 23 agents for contract renewal. 11 of these are 5-year agreement. The remaining, the 12 others are for a contract for 10 years. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions or a suggested motion.
You know what? I never asked this before. Just very quickly, I know the criteria for the 5 and 10 year. Are any of these people were any of them ever involved in a complaint issue in terms of appearing in front of us? Just out of curiosity.
Chair Rosenbaum, commissioners, not at this time.
Okay, and that's one of the criterias, isn't it?
Yeah, if there's more than a notice of violation periodically, whether it's an audit shortage or if it's a minor decoy failure. Those are a notice of violation. Those stay on their record for a total of 3 years, so they can recover from these things by good behavior, if you will. And so very rarely would you ever see anything, because we use our administrative violations to correct behaviors, if you will.
Okay. Okay. I need a motion.
Chair,
Commissioner Floyd,
I move to approve the renewal of the 23 agent agreements listed above.
Commissioner Curran,
Yes.
Commissioner Doherty,
Yes.
Commissioner Floyd,
Yes.
Commissioner Japong Porter,
Yes.
Commissioner Melides,
Yes.
Commissioner Aval,
Yes.
Chair Rosenbaum.
yes.
Thank you,
Last but
Chair.
not,
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. As a point of reference for Florence, they did approximately 1.3 million last year, over 30% sales growth, and the store in Florence closest was up almost 2%. And remember, we're at about 2 years since opening, but it's been a phenomenal venture and quite a surprise to me.
wow. And to me, I remember that one. That's great. That
Thank you.
you should use that. That's a great story. Thank you, Brian.
Laura?
Chairman, I'm just wondering if you wanted to go back to the roll call for minutes, since Commissioner Porter was unable to vote.
Yes, please.
Okay. So I guess I'll just call Commissioner Porter since everybody else voted.
And I vote yes. I apologize. I was having technical issues.
Yeah, well, I got thrown off once. Not bad. This is pretty good considering it's our first time on the new system. It's working very well. Last but not least, our esteemed Executive Director, Stephen Marks. You're on mute.
Chairman, for the record, Steve Marks, Executive Director. I'll just note for the record, particularly for our new commissioners, you have delegated the settlement responsibility to us. You could always take it back. I just said that tongue in cheek, but that's actually the case, right? It's a delegated responsibility from the commission. Otherwise, the commission would have to do all those in the original case resolution. So just so you understand that there are many things the commission delegates to the staff, but you retain the power to oversee. I wanted to stress, and Paul raised a really good issue, I think through email, about our communications about the legislative session. We're going to endeavor to do a better job to keep you apprised. Of course, this is a short session, so about the time we figure it out, it'll be over. We do a better job during the regular session when we have some endurance and the hearings are stretched out. This is, of course, a very compressed session. They've done most of the hearings, most of the bills have moved out of the commission, committee of origin, a lot of them to Ways and Means, where there's a lot of budget issues to resolve around funding for humanitarian assistance, funding for enforcement of the issues of Southern Oregon illicit grows. I just want to characterize, there are very few things in bills or bills themselves that we actually testify in support of and aren't simply explaining. The things that we're clear on, and we made a staff report to you that our recommendation to you and to the legislature was to continue with the production part of the moratorium on our licensees for 2 more years. We made no recommendation on the broader moratorium that they have advanced. That was clear. We did provide some characterizations about how our system was doing and otherwise. And, typically we always remind them that they're in charge of what the market looks like, but it was the open market that built our robust system from the get-go. It's why we have prolific supply chains, why we've been able to tap down on the illegal market, become the market of choice for Oregon consumers, and had the benefits of providing great equity because people had easy access into the system. It doesn't mean we can't do better on those issues and more. We have also favorably supported the continuation presumptive and testing in our work with ODA. There's statute giving us increased authority ensuring that those would go on into the future. We think that is a very critical deterrent program to help ensure that illegal marijuana growers are not, residing inside of ODA's program for those, folks that are growing hemp for its purposes. And, we'd like to help them get that cleaned up so the hemp program is in good shape to go forward for commerce for all those folks that are engaged in it, and hope to drive those numbers down. Just in general, then, I think one of the vital issues, although well debated in the legislature now, is how to fund enforcement, how to fund human trafficking and sex trafficking activities related to marijuana in particular, and related to the enforcement actions against illegal grows. In general, I would just say, and this has been a representation over time from the commission, from staff, that the funds that marijuana taxes go to, the Marijuana Administrative Fund, administered by the Department of Revenue, is where we've placed a lot of the administrative programs that are vital to managing all of the cannabis issues in the state. Much like our operations out of the liquor fund, we take those off the top before distribution. So we take care of running the system first, and then we distribute revenues from there. So we've been at least continuously educating on that issue, that would be a reasonable place, a public policy decision to consider to fund those programs out of the specific marijuana revenues. We're not determinative on that. We're advisory on that. Legislature has made decisions to fund different things within that fund and sometimes not. But we are hopeful, I think, that CJC stable funding in the future is really related to that program. Not clear to me how that's going to turn out in Ways and Means, but we're doing a good job about the awareness of the policy decision there. And then, of course, we just have expressed our complete concern for making sure that there are services for those folks affected by the workers on the farms of the illegal marijuana grows, that they have services. It's really not in our lane to tell people where that comes from or what that looks like, but certainly effective services for that work, for those workers. Some trafficked, virtually enslaved to the operations, need help and assistance, and we're creating part of the displacement problem by the state's focus on going after the illegal growth. So we've been really active in encouraging the legislature to surround that issue. So we did, and I'll just note for the chairman, right, and you remember last commission meeting, Rosie presented all of the bills and components. Generally, all those ideas have moved in some form. The hemp moratorium has changed in an amendment. It is going through the Golden Bill. I'm sorry, I can't remember the number off the top of my head, but it is now triggered not by the state statute, but moratoriums will be triggered locally by local jurisdiction action, county action, to trigger hemp moratoriums for new expansion of licenses now for the industry by the amendment. That's, of course, just working for one chamber and has both chambers to go through. So we'll endeavor a better job to keep you informed of the proceedings, the timings of those, and comments that we make in presentations. we give.
Director Marks?
Yes.
may I? I'm not sure if this is your lane, but have you been able to provide Legislature Ways and Means Committee with graphic, pictorial examples of the trafficking, human trafficking, and other malevolent acts because of the legal grow out for operations?
Yes, Commissioner Gabheim Porter, we have some. Law enforcement primarily has been the source of most of that graphic examples. They have gone after the most, I think, egregious illicit grows, but we continue to keep them informed of what we learn and what we know. But most of that information is coming out of law enforcement cases. And even in those ones we're involved, those typically turn out to be a law enforcement case. So they're the source of operations or source of the investigation information.
Are we able to be present at any of those operations?
Yes, we have been present at several operations. Typically, it might involve, if we're present, a property that has a legal grow on it of some type, or a hemp grow, because we had responsibilities to assist ODA. Those operations didn't involve, and Rich hopped on if I'm wrong, they never involved our licensees, but the properties, we did have licensees on similar and adjacent properties. So we have been involved with some of those, but infrequently on the direct law enforcement investigation actions, more frequently on those related to hemp grows. We'd be on site, maybe I went to the first one I think we did by order of the court. We got a court order because they were denied access. We went out, took a look at it, people ran, and then we had to wait on site as a court order came to allow law enforcement to get on the site throughout the day. So we're working in conjunction with law enforcement, I guess, but we are not primaries on the illegal activity.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions? I've got a couple of things I want to talk about. You talked about the fact that the agent, well, let me start by saying 6 of the commissioners on this call, other than myself, I would call, they're in the field, they're hands-on, they contact, people in their districts, the people in their districts call them up, they get involved in it, and they're doing a civic function, and the least we can do is to supply them with all the information that's possible so that we're in a much better position to give to those people who call us the most relevant information. So whether you take a position, whether the agency takes a position or not, the explanation that you do at these legislative hearings are invaluable to the commissioners. And they need them. And, we get on these calls all the time and talk about how wonderful you guys are and how much we appreciate it, and we do. But we also can get on this call, and I'm, as chairman, taking this opportunity to say, you need to do a better job in terms of keeping us informed. And the reason I say that, Steve, is that this legislature is a part-time legislature. They meet every other year, and then they meet for special session. That's a short relative period of time. It may be a lot of work in it, but it's a short period of time. And I think it's absolutely incredibly important for us to be informed of what's going. I'm assuming that Rosetta is at the legislature today. That's why she's not here. Is that correct?
I am here today.
Oh, okay. Well, then it seems to me, listen, you do a beautiful job. You need to get on this call every time that the legislature's in session and bring us up to date on everything that's going on. I mean, it's incredibly important for us to understand what's going on. And I don't know how much contact you have with us, but especially during the legislative session, 4016 to me absolutely comes out screaming at us. We need to understand, what's going on in the legislature, the time it's going on. And we have it's our decision in the end of what's going to happen with that, with input from the staff. And as it's going on a day-to-day basis, it's not 12 months a year. It's a period of 2 or 3 weeks that it's incredibly important, because that decision on how that final bill comes out is going to affect us for a long time to come. So, Rosie, you do a great job. I want to see your face on these meetings. I want you to tell us directly what's going on. And if you didn't do a good job, I wouldn't be asking you to get on here and tell us on it. So please don't be shy. I want to, every time the legislature's in session, and when they're not, I would like you to be on there every other month, just talking to us and telling us what's going on. I'm sure the commissioners totally agree with me on this thing. So, and one of the things I was thinking was, we have such a, Steve was talking about the allocation of marijuana money, and this isn't the right time and place to say that we can make a change right now, but I want to bring this up. Homelessness is an incredibly important issue to everybody in this state, everybody, with no exception. It affects everybody. Mental illness is an incredible part of the problem, besides drug addiction and alcohol addiction. And we can't do it right now today, but why not try to allocate or earmark money in that, in those funds for mental health for homeless people? Those are the type of things. These are very smart people on this commission. I'm not saying that. I believe it. The more input you give us, the more we can start thinking in terms of what we would like to see happen. And we can't do that without your input. We just can't, because none of us are in a position to follow it the way that you are and Steve. So I said my piece on it. I've already read I wrote the memo on it. This is nothing but positive stuff. You can do it for us, and I would very much like to see that happen in the future.
Appreciate that, Mr. Chairman. I'll just say, the good news here is everything's still in play in Ways and Means, right? And we'll get our insights into that process. But right now, we don't know what subcommittee a lot of those funding issues are going to, at this point. They haven't been referred. So we're working to figure that out. And as soon as we know and get this thing scheduled, we'll advance them, unless Rosie has current information.
Chairman Rosenbaum, Rosie Shatkin, Government Relations Manager for the record. There are a couple of bills that are going to be up on the floor today for House Bill 4016. I think that bill has been amended to address the moratorium issue, and Senate Bill 1565 chiefly sponsored by Senator Golden from Southern Oregon. He has been a collaborative force with legislators from Southern Oregon, bipartisan, bicameral, working on addressing the illicit marijuana issues in Southern Oregon, in addition to drought issues in addition to challenges faced by other farmers relating to labor issues as well. So that bill will be up on the floor today at 11 o'clock on the Senate floor. And so he will be speaking to that bill, and he's asked us questions. He's also expanding the task force from House Bill 3000. That task force was put together to address cannabinoids, in particular the illicit use of hemp products. And they will be expanding the task force to go beyond just the cannabinoids, but also to address the illegal grows. So they're looking to add the Department of Justice, Oregon State Police, in addition to other state agencies, Water Resource Department, to have a more holistic approach to the issues going on in Southern Oregon. And in addition to going on around the state, I think with a focus, because we were given authority to just work in those two counties, but these are issues that are addressed, are going around in the state of Oregon as well, so.
Yeah, at the risk of repeating myself, when you write a memo to Director Marks and saying this is what happened in the legislature today on these issues, it's real simple in this digital world to send us a copy of it too. And if there's something that's so confidential you don't want to share, I understand that, but otherwise, you know.
Will do.
Good. I'll be looking forward to your memos.
Will do. Thank you.
Couple of final things. Steve, have you started looking into a meeting, did we say in June? Is that the best time for Southern Oregon or May?
I believe it's June. Laura, I'm looking for the head nod. Yes, I was sure it was June. Yes, we're looking into that, beginning planning around that. I don't think we've got any particular details at this point in time, but we know our mission to make that happen.
Yeah, and what I would like to do is to have the commission meeting, and whether on the same day or the next day or the night before, have a general meeting for the whole area so that people can come in and ask us any questions they want, and go from there. And we'll figure it out how we want to do it.
Yes, sir. So that's.
And then we're thinking about having one in Eastern Oregon too, right?
Yes, we are, and working on that. I think we should have some discussions about the actual location and timing of that, to get it centered right around other activities take place in Eastern Oregon during that time frame, and making sure we're have the best opportunity to engage. But we got time to set that up, and we'll have that discussion with you, Chair, and the commissioners going forward.
Well, Commissioner Curran is going to be key on all that, but we'll figure it out.
She's part of the input here and why I'm raising this.
We understand. You're very diplomatic, and you said that very well. Last but not least, our next meeting, I think the mask mandate is going to be lifted sometime the end of March. Is that correct? So as far as I'm concerned, we should have one more meeting by Zoom, and then April will return to in-house, in-person meetings.
Mr. Chairman, we should make sure we follow the guidelines for
right.
State agencies' mask mandate is lifted, which is not going to be the same as the general public mask mandate, I do not believe. So we'll keep you apprised of that, but I think it could well fall within what you said, April, might be May, but the guidelines for state agencies are not going to track exactly with the general population's mask mandate.
Okay, so what did we do when we held a meeting in person for those three months? What?
We wore masks.
Oh, I see. Well, okay. Well, what I'm saying, all right. What I'm saying is that we'll have March meeting will be by Zoom or Microsoft or whatever we call it. And then April, we'll go back to in-person meetings, mask or no mask, depending upon what the guidelines are. That sound fair enough? Okay, very good. Well, everybody have a wonderful day. Enjoy, it's good meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.